All right, it's now 22 minutes after 8. This is Morning Express, and joining me on set now is Christine Wairimo and Philip Combo. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. Now, we're going to have a bit of poetry from you. Let me start with you, Christine, and what your poetry is all about.
My poetry is more of reflective on the human experience, so I write based on anything and everything.
So what you perform, you've written?
Myself, yes.
You've written yourself?
Yes.
Okay, is it part of your life story, or is it something that is just inspired?
It's both from my life story and also from interactions with different people.
Okay. Philip, you accompany her with a guitar.
Yes.
Now, poetry normally is done, especially when we're in school, we used to do it, without any accompaniment. So is this like a new development, or is it just, adding some swag into it?
Yeah, this is new age. It's always good to collaborate with other people, and it helps to add like an additional element to your art when you can work with other people. So yeah.
Okay, so do you consider yourself more of a poet or musician?
I'm a singer-songwriter in my own right. So yeah, I do my own things as well.
All right.
So we're here collaborating.
All right. I'll leave you guys to do your thing before we talk about the reading culture in Kenya. And well, let's listen in.
Many of us have let fear take control of our lives. See, we have let fear sit in the driver's seat while we sit shotgun, giving fear the car keys to our favorite cars. Forgetting that fear doesn't know the rules of the road. Fear never went to driving school. Fear will crash your car into a pole. And fear will do what fear does best. Fear will run. Fear hinders our growth. Fear was never meant to be a gardener. Fear is a weed in itself. We should take control of our lives and uproot fear, the weed, from our lives. This poem is titled The Becoming. You cannot fear the growth, yet you cannot run from it. It will be painful, yet it will be beautiful. It will be breaking, it will be shedding, yet it will be living. We would never know gardens of flowers if the flowers had decided that the growing, the breaking out of the soil was too much, too painful for their soft stems and petals to bear. And it would be more comfortable to remain buried underneath the ground. Gender is a societal construct. See, we give things meanings in our minds, put them in dictionaries for people to find. Gender is one of these social constructs. Since we construct these things in our minds, we decide how we shall perform this gender. I am a man, you shall perform this way. I'm a woman, you shall perform your gender this way. People of the neutral gender shall perform their gender in this manner. So it leads us to a situation where some people are allowed to be more expressive and others' emotions and feelings are suppressed. I'd like to challenge how we as society view gender and how we've put people on different pedestals, that we should also allow the male gender to be more expressive and get in touch with how they actually feel, because communication is a two-way street and feelings are water, they were made to flow. This poem is titled For My Son. If I am ever blessed with a son, I hope to teach him that he will not be defined by the number of blows he can strike with his fists closed, or by the number of broken hearts he will leave scattered in his wake, like grains of sand upon the shore. Or by the number of women's names you'll have buried in a forgotten closet in the back of his throat. No. If I am ever blessed with a son, I hope to teach him that his closed palms would perform more miracles when joined in prayer. That hearts are not just muscles, they are homes and gardens that do not deserve to be trampled on. And that women's bodies, emphasis, women's bodies are not conquests meant to be hoarded, then paraded as spoils of war.
All right, and that is Wairimo the poet, and Philly, they're giving us some poetry, and we'll have some more of that as we carry on right here on Morning Express. So let's move on now to the next segment of this particular show, as we would like to now talk about the reading culture. Wairimo and Philly are going to come back just shortly and give us a bit more poetry as we carry on. But joining me also in studio is Hezron Mugambi, who is an author and a lecturer. Thank you for joining us this morning. And Larry Ndivo, who's a lecturer at Machakos University. Thank you for joining us this morning. And possibly before we even start with our conversation, we want to talk about our culture of reading as Kenyans and why possibly it has been on the decline and what needs to happen. But first of all, let's listen into what Kenyans had to say about their culture in reading.
The newspapers, the Nation, the Standard, and the People Daily.
Sometimes I do read books and like weekends. That's the time I do read books.
The culture of reading books as adults has already gone down because, like me, I rarely do that because I only watch movies, which is easier even to understand, and even this culture of you have a lot of responsibility, so you are just looking for money.
All right, so it seems like reading mainly is left to newspapers now. And let me start with you, Dr. Hezron Mugambi, on your thoughts, first of all, as a nation, as a country, and even our youth, how our reading culture has been, and whether it's on the increase or declining.
Thank you, Mike, for having me here. I think we are, as a country, we are doing terribly badly. I would want to say, because as years go by, and as you have just heard Kenyans say, our reading culture is coming down and down if there was a meter. Simply because the culture of reading is something which is developed over a long period of time. And as you have just heard one of Kenyans say, he would rather be watching a movie, which is easier than reading books. Now, therein lies the problem, because our young people would rather entertain themselves with easy-going things, not very difficult, and things which take long time to gratify them, like books. So it is easy to watch a movie. It is easy to go and watch some EPL match, or on television, and laugh about it. Yet you can still laugh in books. You can still engage yourself intellectually. When you encounter a book.
One might argue that that's just where we are in terms of the times. And
Yes.
The reason why I say that is previously, the only way you'd have gotten certain information
Yes.
was through reading.
Yes.
But now there's a whole lot more avenues that have opened up that can still give you the same information, but not necessarily through reading.
That is also true, Mike. But remember the fact that we are saying that in terms of one of the advantages one gets through reading books is that, of course, the ideas, the broader ideas, and what happens elsewhere, and the way people think, and what is happening elsewhere. Of course, that comes now through so many other channels, through social media, through, of course, the media. You are here. But in terms of intellectual stimulation, in terms of expanding your thought and the way you think about many issues which come across, like what the other Kenyan was talking about, you need to interact with as many books as possible, with many ideas across board as possible. And that is brought to us through authors from different aspects of life and from different cultures and different societies. That is why we are saying that newspapers will be good to inform you what is happening around you. Of course, they are online and they are print. But books serve humanity, and most of those books which we can quote and which we can talk about, they are those which transcend cultures, transcend countries. They are borderless. They are things which affect humanity in his everyday endeavor in any society.
All right, Dr.
Yes.
Ndivo, coming to you, do you agree that our reading culture is on the decline? And do you also agree that possibly that is not a good thing?
I think probably there have been some misconceptions in relation to the reading culture, and I would want to probably flip it over and say that what we actually need is not a reading culture, but just to work on our reading habits. And I am not necessarily in agreement that the reading culture has really come down, because I know people who are very keen on reading. And this is not just in connection to people who are in the languages and the literature, but also people who are in business, people who are in some disciplines or professions like medicine. And these are particular individuals who I know probably even read better than I, who is in literature. And for that reason, I would not necessarily say that the reading culture has really come down. I would just say that there have been a bit of some challenges that have come about with probably modernization, with new media and technology that has made people probably move away from the traditional methods of reading, where people carry around hard copies of books. Because now we are more or less seeing people reading PDF documents on Kindle. There are some people who just probably prefer to read from their phones and so on and so forth, or their tablets. And for that, we may not necessarily have a concrete answer where we can say that the reading culture has really come down. So for that, we need to probably shift our thinking around that idea.
Okay. Do you think there's an advantage of reading the traditional kind of reading, you know, hard copy where you literally have a book and flip pages? Is there any advantage that one has?
Definitely, depending on the approach that one wants to take. Because for some of us, especially those who are in my discipline, literature, we love reading our books where we can make comments, where we can write on them, where we can actually interrogate some issues as we read. But there are also those people who want to read their books and they don't necessarily want to make any comments. But the more traditional approach of reading hard copies, I think why it's important is that sometimes just having the physical books around you, like if you have a shelf, is that it begins to socialize other people. That probably there is something interesting in those books. And I'm saying this for those of us who have grown in homes where there have been books around. That's how we have ended up reading. Because it's that which you see constantly, that which is in your face every day. So if there are books within your eyesight, then it means that you are more likely to be tempted to want to read them. But where we have people who probably have moved now to the more modern methods, if I have my phone, phones are more private. So if my books are on my phone, it's hardly that somebody else is going to reach out to my phone. Because again, you know, it's like infringing on my rights. So the more traditional books have, I would say, more advantages as opposed to the more new approaches.
All right, Dr. Mugambi, how do we improve our reading habits? Because naturally, just like the gentleman said, it's easier to sit back and watch a movie. And the reason why it's easier, there are many reasons. One being the fact that you really don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just follow that story. Yeah. When you tell me to read, I have to pick the book, I have to concentrate, and yet we have so many distractions in this day and age. In fact, they say that the concentration span is coming down simply because of so many things happening. You have WhatsApp, you have TV, you have so many things happening. So how do we improve our reading habits?
One of the things we have to understand is that all these gadgets and developments in technology, which has brought us to where we are also working on our reading culture, on our reading habits. Because passively, people like what is passive, so that they will be part of the watching of movie and reading, but not really immersed, not really focused, not really immersed, as it were. But reading, as I know it, and as an author, I will tell you, is consummate. If you have to get ideas, if you have to transform the way you think and the way you do and look at things, then you have to really get time off and say, this is what I want to do during my free time, during the time when I'm not concentrating or I'm not at work. So one of the things we have to do is to change the attitude, because one of the things problems and challenges we have, and I teach writing, is that many people find that reading and writing, because they are related activities, because a better reader is also a good writer, incidentally, most of those. So many of us will have to change our attitude towards what we value. Do we value ideas? Do we value exchanging and knowing what other people think and do? So the attitude, we have to change our attitude, because more often than not, we develop both physically and emotionally and thought-wise when we read ideas of other people and what happens elsewhere. One, so we have to change our attitude towards what constitutes reading and how we should do it. That's one, and very important, because the other day I was asking my daughter, who is at university, in the same university I teach, why she was on TV for a very long time, and she told me that I have read my class notes. I'm tired, so I'm bored. I don't want to proceed with this. So I asked her why she couldn't change and perhaps read a novel, written by perhaps my colleague here, as a literature lecturer and writer. And she told me, those books bore me. The only thing I can do is to read class notes or things related to what I do.
She possibly reads that because she has to.
She has to. That is what I'm saying. So it is really a change of attitude that reading this material is important, is good for you in terms of expanding your idea. So we have to change our attitude. Number two, we have to also think about what we do or what we should do during our leisure time. Because there's also reading for leisure, which many of us don't think is important. And you saw that in the clips. So that we should read as a pleasurable thing, so that instead of saying that we should join entertainment joints, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't join entertainment joints and all that, but as one of the activities to entertain our minds, to entertain ourselves. So the attitude first, to make reading to be part of what we think is pleasurable or what we should do during our extra hours. I think if we change those two, then we are on the right path. Okay. And I also want to say, Mike, that the issue about habits, I think habits create a culture. I think we want to understand it that way, that once we start doing things, then we make it habitual, then it becomes our culture. And there's all that framework which shows that we are, with the advent of technology and social media and all that, we are not doing very well in terms of mainstreaming ourselves in the reading culture.
All right, Dr. Ndivo, your thoughts on the fact that reading, naturally, we have been told, and maybe you'll tell us as a literature author and lecturer, reading grows your capacity. Reading grows, expands your mind, expands your thoughts, expands whichever area you would want to flourish in. Reading would definitely be a way to grow in that area. However, we seem to have a feeling that reading is very hard work compared to other things. Yet we do a lot of reading, because, I mean, if you think about social media, all you do is read. Yeah. If you're on text, it's reading. If you're on Facebook, you still have to read. So really, we read. It's just that now the content of what we read, how do we change our frame of mind to the content, to concentrate on content that is also beneficial, not just abstract stuff that doesn't help us?
I think probably I would pick it up from where Dr. Hezron was talking about the whole, I think, probably idea that people want to read or people want shortcuts. This whole obsession with the fact that we can get things instantly, like the instant gratification. And I'm more inclined to use the analogy of people who love reading promotional or motivational books. I would actually confess and say that I've had a problem reading motivational books. And I keep telling my students that why I have a problem with reading motivational books is because the first thing that strikes you when you open maybe the first or second page is a quotation from famous people, like maybe Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy. And my thinking is, why is it that people want then somebody who has gone and read serious literature to somehow digest it a little bit for them and then give them, so that they can be able to see short clips from Charles Dickens, short clips from Leo Tolstoy, and so on and so forth. For me, I would rather then go for the original. I want to read the original text. And this is about the content that you're asking, that people are finding it difficult probably to connect with the content in the traditional book. But if they really want to, like you mentioned, grow in their professions, to become better in what they do, I would still actually encourage people that the traditional mode of reading is the best approach. Because the narratives that we write, pick an example of a Kenyan narrative, would just be about our daily life. And I'm picking an example like Kenyajui Kombani's The Last Villains of Molo, which some people say was a precursor to the 2007-2008 elections. You read this text, it was written way before that, and for that reason in literature we begin now making the argument that writers probably are prophets of maybe what's going to happen in the future. So you read this narrative, and you're seeing yourself in that narrative. It doesn't matter where you are, like you were saying. It somehow collapses the geography. It somehow collapses the time. So I'm reading a text from maybe a long time ago, and I'm in the 21st century. This is a novel maybe of the 10th century, and yet I can be able to see myself in that narrative. So it helps you to see where we are coming from as a people. It helps you to actually begin to visualize where you want to be in a few years to come, and it puts you in some situations where probably there are conflicts, and now they have been resolved. So it also helps you not just actually to see yourself in that conflict, but also it helps you to mitigate through that conflict. So because it expands the avenues for you to be able to see, if I am caught in this kind of a scenario, what are the options for me? Can I take this way out? And then by giving those kinds of options, you see where people have taken shortcuts, and probably they've not had a good way out of it. So you become careful about it. So it could be about the traditional moral story. It could just be about leisure, like you were saying. So the idea is now to make a purpose, just purpose to read. But then also ask yourself, what is it that I want to gain from my reading? It's just, for pleasure. And I think that is one of the places where I would want to encourage everybody to begin. Just read simply because you want to enjoy the story.
Okay. Dr. Mugambi, yes. We are concluding. Yes. And just to weigh in, because I'm sure our schools, our education system have a lot to weigh into how we have our reading habits. And like you mentioned, your daughter was probably reading, and many of us probably do that because we have to. You need to pass an exam, and therefore I have to read. But now, changing that context to where now I read for leisure, I enjoy it, but also to expand my imagination. Yes. When we look at our education system, it kind of gives us answers to things. If I asked you A is 4, I'll probably get the same answer from you. Whereas if I came to you and I say, give me what A stands for. If I asked you the question, you'd give me a different answer. Do you think our education system weighs in how our reading habits have gone down, according to you?
I would say partly yes, partly no. Because what we do in school, in universities, and Dr. Ndivo is here, is to kind of train, help students and young Kenyans on how or ways of reading. What they do with that, after that, may not be in our purview. So I think progressive going forward, the change, first of all, in the education system may be helpful because then it is focused on helping people who will be budding writers, people who will be good readers, people who will be broadcasters like yourselves, to do what they think they're good in. So sometimes I think the education system, the way it was, the current education system, was more wholesale than particular. But in a nutshell, all education systems in the world train And that is why when somebody graduates, they are told to do all that as it pertains to that degree. So they start doing after graduation. But I think the more focus we have been having is that we've been focusing more on exams, just as you said, so that somebody reads or a student reads, whether in high school or university, to pass exams. Once they have passed exams, they forget about that. That explains why students in Form 4 will have a ceremony at the end of Form 4, and you know what they do is to burn those books. That shows you that those books were very bad, and they were actually very bad. They were a torment. So they are selling, banning them to forget about the bad experiences, so to speak. But even in university, you ask students after, just finishing a literature class and graduating about issues and which they discussed or they learned in school. Many of them may not be able to tell you more than 50%. What that means is that while the universities and colleges will be trying to lay a basis, giving fish, so to speak, the fishing then happens after that. So the education system, yes, but I think we have to inculcate values and inspire our youth on why certain things like reading across board, whether it is on phone, whatever, traditional and all that, are important. Once we inculcate those values, just like we are saying, by Kenyan, why do people feel like books which are written in Kenya or in South Africa or in Africa are not very good books? So it is the value system we have to think and say that this is a very good thing to do. This is a very good habit to calculate. This is very good for us personal to be able to do as a way of not only developing our thinking capacity, but personally having personal development in that sense.
Let me also bring in Dr. Devo, maybe as we close, your message to the young out there, the youth, basically on their reading culture, very briefly.
I would really want to encourage the youngsters that reading is good for them. So all they need to do is just become purposeful in what they are doing. So for example, if they are in a course like communication, it would be important for them to just pick books that are outside of their discipline and just begin to engage them. Because you can imagine the instance where I want to be a journalist who covers probably nature and things that have to do with climate change. It means that if I'm only considering the courses that I'm being given in journalism, then I might probably not necessarily engage matters that are related to nature or environmental conservation. So if we can get the young people at a tender age to just become interested in reading, then we would, at that particular moment, socialize them into what we might then eventually call a culture of reading, because they would learn to actually enjoy the reading. Okay. And then they would actually get to understand that these are things that are going to become, good for them in terms of even mentorship and in terms of growth in their careers.
All right, and thank you, gentlemen. Definitely we want to increase our reading culture, but I also want us to bring in Wairimu, the poet, and I believe she has also done a book. Wairimu, what is your book about?
My book is a mixture of poetry and prose, and it's mainly focusing on centering yourself in an individual in who you are, because we find that, for instance, we are taught very many things in school, but no one ever tells you how to truly learn how to love yourself, how to be comfortable in your own skin. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with from, I'd say, maybe the teenage years, even into early adulthood. So you find that people suffer from things like low self-esteem or lack of proper self-confidence, which if someone had really spoken to them, affirmed them in who they are and tell them, you're brilliant and all these things, it would really help.
But do you find your age mates possibly read as much as they should, or would they prefer to maybe go online and watch a YouTube clip on, some motivational something?
Actually, a large majority of my friends read. Like, for instance, I had a friend, he was part of a business. They used to ship books into the country. But the biggest challenge they face is in terms of taxes. Like, even I buy books from outside because my book is available on Amazon. Amazon is my distributor. Bringing in books into the country is a lot of tax. So it would also sort of be expensive for people to keep buying books when they could alternatively use that money to go on things like, holiday or do something else.
All right, and there is the book right there, as you can see it, written by Wairimu the poet. And just before we exit and give Wairimu the poet and Philly a chance to give us a poem, and if time allows, two maybe. Philly, do you read a lot yourself? Or you read music?
I'm more of a creator than a reader, but I read sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see whether we can increase that culture. So at this point in time, it's time for me to say goodbye, but I want to leave Wairimu the poet giving us a poem as we exit. But from us here on Morning Express, we want to thank you for keeping us company and wish you a fantastic and a great weekend. Let's do this again on Monday, bright and early, right here on Morning Express. But for now, I exit the stage for Wairimu and Philly.
Thank you. Feelings are water, they were made to flow. So when you build yourself a wall and make yourself a dam, see, you are only putting pressure on a wall that will eventually break. Many of us struggle with expressing how we truly feel, and this in turns us into human dams. And when we are not able to express, let this water flow, we end up having things such as nervous breakdowns or suffering from different kinds of disorders which would be cured or be reduced in terms of occurring if we allowed ourselves to feel. This poem is titled Walled In. I will help you build a wall. I will pass you the mortar and help you layer the bricks on top of each other. I will help you build a wall. One even you won't be able to climb at all. See, you will hide whatever you feel on the inside, and the face you show the world will bear no resemblance to the pressure you feel on the inside. I will help you build a wall. Don't forget to pray it doesn't fall. But you are here building a collapsing dam, and you've been hindering these feelings from flowing. You've been blocking this water from coming out of you. So when the wall collapses and the doctors say he's having relapses, will I be there to pick you up